When Daryl's out of town, everything always gets screwed up. That's the way I believe it is. On the Extra Mile here. Hey guys, you are listening to Caitlin Seam along with Michael Ward tonight. There is only 2 of us on this show compared to the usual 4. Lita is on vacation, and Darryl decided that he'd rather go party with his college friends than hang with us on the show. So I see how it is. So Michael, you ready to just do this dang thing together?
Yes, I'm ready to duology here today, but, you know, we got it. We got y'all here.
I promise to be on my best behavior tonight.
Lie again.
I'll do my best at the very least.
And no snorting.
That I can't guarantee. But yes, you are listening to, how does Darryl say it, the fastest show on IE Sports Radio, something else. He always has such cool little quips for that, and I don't remember them when I'm put on the spot like that. So I don't remember. Yeah, we are wrecked for sure. We're starting out the gate wrecked. It's really what this comes down to. But that's okay. It happens sometimes. That's right. I mean, we're just setting the bar low so that we, guarantee that we're going to, end up above the bar. Or at least at the bar. Maybe drinking at the bar at this rate. We don't know.
That sounds good right about now. But anyway.
Right? I had a little glass of wine in between shows. So sometimes it doesn't hurt. But yeah, so it's just the 2 of us today. But that's alright. We'll find plenty of shenanigans, I'm sure. We were actually talking before the show came on. We don't know how long this one's going to last today. We'll see how long we can drag it out for. But we're just going to hop right into it. We're going to start with Indycar, since that's the only race we had this past weekend, actually, for the topics we discuss on our show here. And it was kind of convenient for once, Michael, because I actually got to sit down and watch the entirety of this race. And I kid you not, it is the first time, even though I was at the Indy 500 earlier, I did not sit down and watch the whole race. I was partying my face off too much in the steak pit. So really, the race at Gateway this weekend for IndyCar was actually the first IndyCar race I got to see from start to finish. And it was mighty nice to be able to enjoy it under the lights on a Saturday night. So it was nice. It was a nice little change of pace there to be able to actually watch the race.
Definitely a good one, and it definitely seemed like it kept you on your toes, because it was a cracker of a race.
It was. So we definitely have a couple things to talk about, which is cool. So just a little discussion about the race here.
British all of a sudden?
Apparently, we've been listening to Matt White too much. Apparently.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is that right off the bat, we almost had a repeat of Pocono at the start of the Gateway race, where the same people that tried to wreck in Pocono, or managed to wreck, I should say, nearly got into each other at the beginning of the race in Gateway, but lucky enough, we were able to save it this time, and everybody was able to skirt through. But unfortunately for everybody else, that was really the only save that made it throughout the race. Tires ended up becoming a bit of an issue. We did see a couple drivers pit with blistered tires. And then there was the issue of the marbles on the racetrack and the buildup of those as well. In the beginning, I kind of had this feeling that it might have been because the NASCAR ARCA, attached now. They're not official, but they own them. But the ARCA series actually raced before the IndyCar race. And so at first I was like, well, maybe all the marbles are from them, but it really did kind of keep picking up as the night went on as well. They would, on the cautions, they would try to sweep them up to help it out, but it definitely turned into an issue. So much so that it ended up being actually one of the lead reasons that we had so many cautions during the race. And you were looking at Will Power ended up getting up into the marbles on cold tires. He ended up wrecking himself. Joseph Newgarden did get up into the marbles. He ended up saving his car, but it did bang up against the wall when he had it. Ericsson actually hit the wall, and as did Bourdais as well. So they all ended up getting caught in those marbles, and it just sucks you right up to that wall. And a few of their nights got ended because of that. And with a few of these heavy hitters having wrecks, even though they were self-wrecks. Like I said, Joseph didn't wreck. The other ones had less luck than he did on that end. But we actually had Santino Ferrucci leading the majority of this race at Gateway. And we kind of talked a little bit before the show, Michael, and I want to get your opinion on this now, because while the commentators were bragging up that this rookie was leading the majority of this race and was looking so good, everyone really did treat him like he was a bright and shiny new penny, and they all kind of seemingly forgot that Ferrucci only ended up in Indycar because he got his ass kicked out of Formula 2 over in Europe because of all of the stunts that he had gotten into, which he openly admitted that he doesn't regret any of it, the reasons that he ended up getting himself kicked out of Formula 2. But I did find it kind of interesting because they literally never brought this up, and they really treated Ferrucci like he is just this incredible driver, this incredible kid with all of this talent. And I kind of scratched my head a little bit at that, because I was like, so do we all like take amnesia pills? Do we all forget why he's even here to begin with? Or does it not really matter that he's been vocal about things that should matter to people? What is your take on all of that, Michael?
The answer is yes, Caitlin. You are supposed to take an amnesia pill.
Damn it! Why do I always miss these? I always take the wrong damn pills. Kidding. I'm so kidding.
Essentially, when it comes to drivers like Ferrucci, I think they don't want to touch on any of the stuff that they're... I think they're just trying to be... Because I know that he's done some politically messed up stuff and, some wild stuff over in F2. I think they're trying not to delve too much into this. I think they're just trying to stay neutral about it because, what happens over in Europe, it's Europe. This is IndyCar. It's a whole different ball game. And I think they're just trying to stay away from all of that and just remain neutral to the driver as a publicity thing.
Yeah. Because he did get pretty political, even with American politics over there. And that was one of the big reasons that the team ended up letting him go, is because he so clearly violated some of the rules and did it anyway. Like I said, and I know we try to keep politics out of things over on these shows over here on IE Sports Radio, but at some point you do have to consider when they draw such a specific line like that, and when their beliefs are definitely get brought up on things that are actually very touchy, and not at all in a good way. Do we just look at that and say, no, they're fine, we're just going to enjoy him as a driver, but we're going to try to forget that he's a shitty person outside of the car? Where is that line supposed to be drawn, though? Because a person's still a person, and you're still representing, yourself as a whole most of the time.
Right, you're right, and if your opinion on him is definitely what you make it out to be, but as commentators, they're not supposed to show any bias towards any drivers. They're not supposed to say this, that, or the other. And, I think some commentators will say, screw that, and say what they want about him. But I think on air, they're just trying to be very neutral and not try to paint him in a bad light. I think it's mostly about being professional and not bringing up, the crazy stuff that he's done. And, like I was saying to you, had I not known the stuff that he's done, I probably would be liking him myself, but because I know, I don't, and I think that's what they're trying to enforce. It's if we don't talk about what he's done, this hot-headed new driver, it's gonna bring more views.
So what you're saying is that they're trying to treat it like ignorance is bliss when it comes to the faults of Santino Ferrucci.
Yes. Let's not talk about it. He's an F2 driver. Great. He's an F2 driver coming to IndyCar. Nobody really, I don't think most of the crowd would know about what goes on out there. So it's just basically, okay, they don't know. We're not going to talk about it. This is a new driver. Cool.
You do make a valid point. But the thing is, maybe Ferrucci did get his just desserts because he did not end up winning this race that he led so much of. And actually, at the end of the race, Ferrucci actually got loose in the marbles while trying to race Joseph Newgarden, and he actually dove back down onto the track, almost collided with Joseph, which actually sent Newgarden down into the grass, and he actually spun out, was able to barely recover, but he had to limp across the line a little further down than he should have been originally. That being said, though, the actual finish in and of itself was a nail-biter for sure. I loved every second of it. Sato was leading at the end, and Ed Carpenter literally finds a blast of wind to scoot him through. Almost takes the win at the line, but Takuma Sato does beat Ed Carpenter to the finish line by 0.0399 seconds. Just under, or just over 3/hundredths of a second, was the spread there. Were you able to at least see the finish there, Michael, and that incredible ending?
Oh yeah, it was definitely a great ending. I definitely enjoy a good photo finish, even though he was, not half a car length, but you know what I'm trying to say. But it was great to see, and it's great to watch, and the whole race was just really fun to watch.
It was, and I think we were reminded during even the entirety of the race, even with the tire problems, I felt like it added kind of a good little challenge to the teams to try to stay up on, because this is a newer track. This is the third year we've had this race back, after nearly a decade of no racing for IndyCar here at Gateway, and it was the largest crowd that they've had to date in the last 10 years there for IndyCar, so they ended up getting an incredible turnout this year, and I feel like you could really tell, because even in the beginning when it got a little quiet and like it was more strategy, I don't know, even watching it, like the cool thing about IndyCar and what I kind of miss from old school NASCAR in that regard is that every lap in that IndyCar race felt like it was the last lap. There was like 120 laps to go at one point, and I'm watching this race, and I literally thought we were at like 5 laps to go because they were racing so hard. But that's how they raced every single lap there, and to me that's one of those huge highlights to IndyCar, is that even on these ovals, they are literally dogfighting it out for position no matter what lap you're on. Whereas in NASCAR, I feel like you really lose that these days. I feel like so many drivers just kind of coast through that middle. Like if you're not leading and you're not last, you're okay. Like you're just kind of, you're logging the laps. And I really don't ever feel like it ever came to that at Gateway. Like I feel like I was always excited about something going on track during this race.
Yeah, the way I looked at it is just the track itself looked like it just promoted racing. If to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it's just like you said, the tires did come into effect, and it's just that race was tires and tire degradation done right. You know how we had in 2011 in Formula One where we had the Pirelli situation where tires degraded like a ridiculous pace, but here it kind of made the racing more interesting. Well, actually, it did make the racing more interesting. So I definitely think that it's the strategy, the tires, and the fact that it seemed like maybe the tires, the drivers couldn't push as hard, and so there wasn't as big as a gap, and it just promoted more racing.
I absolutely agree, and like I said, I was so happy I got to watch this race in the entirety for once. I was actually supposed to work that night, and I ended up not having to, and so I got to embrace it. I know, can't ever complain about having a Saturday night off, and it just worked out well that we had a great race to watch for it. So the top 10 was actually kind of crazy with all of that, the tire and like the mini wrecks with each, like more individual wrecks than we did anything because of those pesky little tires and the marbles on the track. We ended up having a pretty interesting top 10 finish. So obviously, as we already had said, Takuma Sato finished first, Ed Carpenter finished second, and to round out the podium, this weekend was actually Tony Kanaan. Kind of forgot about that guy.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen him making moves, and it looks like he's managed to fight his way back onto the podium.
Right? So a little mini congratulations to Tony Kanaan for finding third place there. Ferrucci ended up finishing fourth. In fifth place, we had Simon Pagenaud. Connor Daly actually had his best finish of the season, and he finished in sixth place. So a really incredible finish for him. Actually, what I thought was super cool is that the commentators actually spent a lot of time talking about Connor during the race, which I thought was kind of cool. What I kind of appreciated more than I feel like, especially with NASCAR, they kind of focus on your main drivers. And Connor Daly actually got a lot of attention on screen, so I thought that was pretty cool. Definitely fought hard for it, so sixth place was an incredible finish for him. We'll actually be talking about him a little bit later in the show here with some other interesting news coming in with Connor Daly involved. But to finish the top 10 here, seventh place because of that spin he had with his near wreck with Ferrucci at the end. Joseph Newgarden finished seventh. Eighth place was actually Ryan Hunter-Reay. Colton Herta finished ninth. And to round out the top 10, Michael, can you believe it? But Darryl Andretti ended up in 10th. It's nearly a win for him.
Yeah, that is nearly a win for him. Sadly, that's nearly a win for him. Yes, and I
But I mean, I was pretty impressed with this top 10. You know, I really wasn't ever expecting Sato to win this race, that's for sure. Kanaan finishing third. Obviously, we had the rookie and Ferrucci in fourth. Connor Daly having his best finish of the year. Ryan Hunter-Reay showing up all of a sudden. Even we got little Colton Herta up there, but also Marco Andretti. Like, well, hey Marco, nice to see you again. I'm glad you remembered how to drive your car.
Yep, definitely glad to see him up there again.
So yeah, so definitely was an exciting finish, an interesting finish when it comes to those drivers in the top 10. It did shake up the standings a little bit going into Portland this weekend. So we're actually 2 races away here from the end. Joseph Newgarden is still number 1, still leading the pack here for the points championship standings. But Pagenaud actually jumped up to second place in the standings, so he's 38 points behind first, and Rossi actually fell down to third place, where he ended up falling to 46 points behind. And Dixon, who we didn't talk about Dixon, but he actually had a hole in his radiator in the beginning of the race. He was out for the majority of the race. He ended up coming back and logging some laps near the end again. So rough finish, rough night for Dixon. So Scott Dixon's actually in fourth place at minus 70 points behind Joseph Newgarden. And that's kind of where the line is drawn. Will Power, who again wrecked kind of early on in that race for hitting those marbles and hitting the wall, ending his night. He actually let's try that again. He's fifth in the standings with negative 147 when it comes to points. With that all being said, Michael, we actually are going back-to-back here, and so they're actually going to be racing this Sunday. It is a very busy Sunday for racing this weekend, so they will be heading back to the Grand Prix of Portland this Saturday, and that race is at 3 p.m. And yeah, so Portland I kind of feel like is a bit of an interesting little track. It is another road course. I just pulled up the little details about it so we could tell you guys about it. So Portland International Raceway actually opened in 1961 per Indycar and their app. And it was the former location of the city of Vanport, which was destroyed by the Memorial Day 1948 flood. The 12-turn, 1.964-mile natural road course is relatively flat but contains several spots for passing opportunities, including a quick chicane at the end of the front stretch, a hard-braking right-hander in turn 7 leading onto the sweeping backstretch, and a 3-turn complex leading back onto the front stretch. Al Unser Jr. won the first IndyCar race in 1984. In 1997, the race set the now current all-time record for the closest 2-car and closest 3-car finish in IndyCar racing history on a road course. Mark Blundell beat second place Gil de Ferran by 0.027 of a second and beat third place Raul Boesel by 0.055 of a second in a 3-wide finish.
That's crazy.
Isn't that pretty fun?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy right there.
And it actually wasn't brought back onto the schedule until last year. And last year, actually, Takuma Sato is the person who won. So are we thinking he's going to have a back-to-back win this weekend, Michael? Or are we feeling like somebody else is going to take the top spot coming into Portland?
I don't think he's going to have a back-to-back win. There's too many people hungry for the championship right now. So I think he's going to be in a good contention. But to get the win, I don't know. We have a lot of drivers trying to get, the maximum championship points they can get. So it's going to be a close call to see.
Absolutely, especially with, and if you think about it, Joseph Newgarden's just going to be wanting to keep his gap of a lead going into this second to last race of the year. But then you have Rossi, who just fell, so he's going to be hungry. Pagano's starting to close that gap, and then we have Dixon, who's going to be in a point of desperation at 70 points back. He is definitely going to be a win to get in kind of place there for that championship run.
Right.
So even though there's only 2 of us, somebody has to pick some winners. So Michael, who are you going to pick for this weekend at Portland?
I'm gonna go with Newgarden.
Strong contender there, absolutely. I would definitely have picked Rossi if I could, but I can't because I believe I picked him last weekend to win at the Gateway, though sometimes I can't remember who I pick. So I'm going to go with the other man, and I'm actually, for once this year, going to pick Simon Pagenaud to pull out this win. I think we're going to get a tighter race going into the final one. I feel like we're going to have to literally see who wins to get that championship. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Pagenaud is going to close that point gap just a little bit on good old Newgarden with a W over there in Portland. So again, you can catch that race on Sunday, September 1st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Yes, if you don't have to work, that's the place to go. We are going to go ahead and take a quick break here. We got Hot Laps by Matt White, so we're going to have that coming to you here too on our break. And then when we get back, we do have a little bit of crossover news going on here. So there's a little bit of an F1 IndyCar little crossover happening this weekend. And then we also have more Formula One news to talk, them coming out of summer break. And then after that, we will be hitting up a little bit of conversation about NASCAR this weekend as well. So stay tuned, guys. Hold on, and we'll be right back.
My NBA college basketball fans out there, tired of hearing about just the dramatic stuff in the basketball world, tired of hearing about what such and such reward tonight and not about the game? Hey, leave all of that alone, because on Wednesday night I got this show called Fast Break with Phil Jones here on the IE Sports Radio. And all we talk about is straight basketball, from where it comes down to the NBA, the NCAA, and even the WNBA. I don't discriminate. I give all my NBA, my basketball, whatever you want with sports, to the slam dunks, to the three-pointers, to the teardrops, to the game winners. I'm there. I'm speaking about it. I have a debate. I have my panel. I got a squad that rolls in. And we're going to be talking mad sports. We're going to be talking about the Lakers. We're going to be talking about even the Brooklyn Nets. We're going to be talking about who's the top team out there in the NBA. So, tired all the drama, tired all the... What did he wear today? What kind of shoes he had? Forget all that. Just come over. Listen to Fast Break with Phil Jones here on IE Sports Radio every Wednesday night at 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, y'all. So, yo, tune in.
What up, all you boxing fans? This is Vince Wright, the sports governor, and me and Gilbert Batista are the host of Ringside on IE Sports Radio. Make sure you keep it tuned to IE Sports Radio, Spreaker.com for the latest edition of Ringside. All the boxing news you need right here. Keep it tuned, Spreaker.com, IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey, what's up, sports fans? You're looking for a different type of sports talk show, something you haven't heard before? You got to check out the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday on 2 Live Stews Radio, 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. Sports talk at its finest. Always have great guests, playing some good hip-hop. You don't want to miss it. Make sure to tune in to the BS3 Sports Show every other Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to the Extra Mile here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. It's that time again, hot laps and nearest the win update here from Matt across the pond in the UK. We'll start, as we always do, with hot laps. And we'll start on Saturday night because Takuma Sato took victory in the Indycar race at Gateway. Xfinity Series for NASCAR was also in action on Saturday. Christopher Bell getting the win on the road circuit at Road America. Virgin Australia Supercars Championship was in action at Tailem Bend, a double victory for Championship leader Scott McLaughlin. Oyt Tanak took a third at WRC Germany victory in a row to extend his championship lead. MotoGP were in the UK, not far from Two Wheels Towers, at Silverstone, and Alex Rins pipped Marc Marquez to the victory in the very last corner on the very last lap. In Germany, the DTM were at Lausitz Ring. 2 wins for Audi, courtesy of Nico Müller and Rene Rast. Brett Moffitt took his second win in a row in the Truck Series. They were up in Canada at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. And the IMSA action happened at Virginia International Raceway this week. GT only, and it was won by Nick Tandy and Patrick Pilet in the GTLM Porsche. This week on Nearest to Win, it is a triple shot. We've got Formula 1 at Spa, IndyCar at Portland, and NASCAR at Darlington, all on Sunday. So get your picks in using hashtag Nearest the Win. Congrats to Darryl, Matt Owens, and Seth Eves, the guys from USRN. They all picked up points this weekend for Simon Pagenaud finishing 5th at Gateway. Caitlin Still, that means, has a 7-point lead over Larry B at the top. Matt Owens now on 20, closing in gradually. Darryl on 19, Seth on 14, myself and Lita on 12, Michael is on 11, Couch Crew Chief on 10. 3 Nearest the Win races. Make sure you get your picks in on hashtag Nearest the Win if you want to get involved with this week's picks. That's it for Hot Laps. That's it for the Nearest the Win update. We'll be back on the show next week at the same time. But for now, it's back to the rest of the crew.
Thank you so much, Matt White, for giving us our hot laps of the week. Appreciate it as always. And you can catch him on Two Wheels Wednesday on, you guess it, Wednesday. It's right in the name there. It's nice and convenient there, so make sure you check him out over there. But thank you again, Matt, for that. So, before we went to break, I did mention a little Formula One IndyCar crossover, and that would be because Marcus Ericsson will actually be heading back to Europe this weekend per a summons by Alfa Romeo, who he is actually the reserve driver for. And the reason for this is because Kimi Räikkönen actually pulled a muscle, and while he expects to race in the Belgian Grand Prix this weekend, it's not 100% certain. And so they've called Marcus Ericsson over to be on the safe side just in case they're going to need to have him hop in the car. And because of this, Connor Daly will actually be driving the number 7 Aero Schmidt Peterson Motorsports Honda in Portland for IndyCar this weekend. And Connor has competed in 5 races this season. That 6th place finish I told you about earlier at the Gateway this past weekend, it was his best of the season, but he also did finish in 10th place at the Indy 500 this year. And he actually raced for Schmidt Peterson back in 2015, where he raced 4 races for them. So yeah, kind of doing that crossover. I think it's a great opportunity for Connor. Michael, how do you feel about this whole little quick change of drivers going on over here?
I like it. You know, it is what it is. Some drivers get injured, and it creates a whole other mess. But it allows a driver to definitely get up there, get into some higher quality machinery, and just allows you to see what they can do. So I think he's gonna do great. I think he's gonna take this opportunity to learn more about the car, learn more about the team, and definitely see if he can show off a little bit and get himself another good ride.
Absolutely. And I honestly have to give props to Schmidt Peterson and Motorsports to be this flexible in the fact that, they could have thrown a stink about this if they wanted to. And they didn't. They were very supportive of it. They gave him the go-ahead to go back to Europe for this weekend, which means missing the race over in Portland. But I do, and it's a completely different racing body, so I do give some definite props to Schmidt Peterson Motorsports for being flexible enough and understanding enough for this exchange to happen. I think that's pretty cool, too.
That's great.
And then I guess, and we'll just start, we're going to lead right into Formula One with that too. And so, again, it's kind of up in the air with this pulled muscle. Let's make some quick guesses. Do you think Kimi Räikkönen's going to race this weekend, or do you think it's going to end up being that Marcus Ericsson had to fly over for a reason?
If it's bad, yeah, it's good to put Ericsson in the car, but I think Kimi will recover fine. I mean, it's Kimi.
I know, that's kind of what I felt like too when I read who he was going to be possibly stepping in for. I'm like, for a pulled muscle, I feel like it will have to be pretty substantial to get him not in the car this weekend. So I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that Marcus will just be enjoying a little bit of a vacation over in Europe this weekend instead of racing in Portland.
Right.
Which I guess there is worse things. But really, go ahead, Michael.
Oh no, I wasn't about to add anything. I think he's just gonna. I think if anything's the case, he'll be like, is it too late to go back to Portland?
Right. Scratch that, Connor. And thanks for keeping my seat warm, but I'm taking it back. I don't blame him there. And really, that is only the beginning of the news we have over in Formula One. I'm actually kind of surprised with Lita and Darryl being gone because we have plenty of Formula One stuff to talk about, so I wouldn't be too surprised if we might be talking about a few of the pieces we're going to talk about here in a second next week when they're back on the show, just because we got some good dirt going on here. But yeah, the summer break's coming into an end this weekend for Formula One, and it's almost like we had our own mini silly season in between races here. So per motorsport.com earlier today, it was announced that Esteban Ocon will actually be replacing Nico Hülkenberg at Renault come 2020 on a 2-year deal. Now, Ocon actually lost his seat for this year to Lance Stroll, thanks to Lance Stroll's daddy buying out the race team. So we're finally getting to see Ocon back into a seat, at, like I said, again, at the expense of Hulkenberg. So how are we feeling about all of this for this part of the news here, Michael?
I honestly feel pretty gutted for Hulkenberg, because Hulkenberg is a great driver. He really is a good driver, and it just sucks just to see him just not be able to get. It's just it honestly it just sucks that he's just getting it taken away from him. But at the same time, I can kind of understand it, because it is Esteban Ocon. He's a really fantastic driver, fast driver. He has some inputs about Mercedes, I'm guessing. You got to get some info on that Mercedes team in order to beat them.
Well, and it's interesting that you should say that, Michael, because he actually got brought up in conversation as well. That kind of got shut down, because this morning Mercedes actually announced that Valtteri Bottas will be driving for them again in 2020 on a one-year deal. But there had been some mention, even from Mercedes, that they were actually debating pretty hard about taking Bottas out and putting Ocon in there. And instead, Renault actually ends up snatching him up. So this really could have been a very interesting scandal had it fallen a little bit of a different way.
Yeah, it could have been, but I think it would. I don't know. I think keeping Bottas was the best call, because I hate to say this, but Bottas is doing a really good job as the second place driver or the number 2 driver. He's there. He's getting podiums. He's getting the occasional wins.
So you're saying is he makes a very good Robin to Lewis Hamilton's Batman?
Basically.
Yeah. And I don't know if Ocon could handle that. Like, I don't know if Ocon would be willing to be a second.
Right, and also, yeah, like you said, Ocon wouldn't be able to just be second all the time. You would try to compete for wins, and I think Mercedes doesn't want a driver to go for wins. I think what they want is just a clear, you're the first driver, you're the second driver. All right, go and get us first and second.
Right.
They don't want another Hamilton-Rosberg scenario. They want to clear, you're the number 1 driver. They want to clear, you're the number 2 driver.
Absolutely. And they seem to have that right now. So this will be the 4th season with Bottas in that seat going into next year there. Like I said, that one, it sounds like it'll be a 1-year contract. So we'll kind of see where that progresses to. But again, not everything got clear cut, so there was another shakeup too, so we're not done just yet. It was actually also announced that Pierre Gasly has actually been degraded. So he is out at Red Bull, he has been sent down to Toro Rosso, and Alexander Albon will be the new second seat for Red Bull for the remainder of this season. So he actually is taking over coming into Spa here. They're not even letting the season finish out there. Pierre Gasly, you get set aside. Alex Albon, your number has been called up. So a pretty interesting little switcheroo there as well.
Yeah, I feel bad for Gasly. Apparently, he just wasn't able to get the car dialed in. He just wasn't able to get the most out of the car like Max is doing, and this car apparently suits more of Max's driving style than Pierre Gasly's driving style, because Max is really aggressive and Pierre, he's a little bit more timid on the wheel, and also he's been having trouble overtaking, and a lot of this just caused him to have a demotion, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And the thing is, too, is that when you look at what Max Verstappen has done this season, he's really the only driver to consistently challenge Mercedes this year. And while that's happening, we haven't really seen anything of Gasly. So it's almost not too much of a surprise if you think about it when you're comparing Max Verstappen to whoever the number 2 is, because it's not like Verstappen's going out there with, with a Robin to his Batman to kind of battle these Mercedes. He's kind of just doing it on his own. So maybe we'll be able to see a little bit more teamwork helping and handing out, and maybe even Alex coming into this, and maybe he'll even be able to compete with Mercedes as well.
Right, and all this is going on. It's like, what's Ferrari going to do about all this?
Ferrari's just a sleeper cell at this point. At this point, it's with Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull are going, new phone, who dis?
Basically, and it's Mercedes making changes, Red Bull's making changes, and then you got Ferrari trying to figure out what else can it do, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like they're definitely struggling more than I expected them to this season, especially obviously with Mercedes setting the standard, but this year Red Bull really is the only team that's actually challenging Mercedes in anything.
Right, and it's just crazy to see, because Red Bull aren't really all that fast in a straight line. It's mostly an aero-dependent car, but because, aero allows you to be more aggressive with the car, and, Verstappen's already an aggressive driver, it just works out for him.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it doesn't work out for Pierre, because he's more of a timid driver, and, unfortunately, Verstappen, they're going to cater more to Verstappen because he's the clear number 2. Not number 2, number 1.
Yeah.
So they're just going to do whatever Verstappen says to do.
So we might have a little bit of... I think it'll be interesting to see. I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of results Alexander Albon can give us in that second Red Bull seat now for the rest of the season. And everything I looked into, I couldn't quite tell, but it does kind of sound like his future in that seat is very much dependent on what he can produce throughout the rest of the season this far. And that all being said, though, from the looks of it, coming into the 2020 Formula One calendar, either there's going to be some solid new racing for other cars to beat Mercedes, or Mercedes is just going to be able to add some more wins to their list. So it did get released earlier today, the tentative new schedule for Formula One. It is being waited on to get actual approval by the FIA, but on the new schedule, you're looking at 22 races next season. 7 of those will be back-to-back race weekends. For the first time ever, we'll be racing in Vietnam, and we will be returning to Vandervoort. I don't know how to say that word.
That's just hard.
There's Z's and double O's with a B. I don't know. That's a weird word. Zandervoort? Maybe that's it. See, I don't know. But either way, they're going back. So, but again, we are waiting for approval by the FIA for this to be a very literal thing. But it is looking like we're going to be seeing a little bit more of Formula One next year.
And that's great. But unfortunately, that means a lot less time for these guys to relax.
And they're going to end up being even crankier at that point, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And the interesting thing to see about this, too, is because we really haven't gotten any of the reactions from the drivers yet, since this is all kind of tentative. But we had this discussion last year. Lewis Hamilton has made it known that he didn't want to add any more races to the schedule.
Right. Yeah, he did. I do remember he saying that.
Yeah, because he had mentioned that, he doesn't want to add any more races to the schedule, and he thought that they had too many races as it was. And now they went and added some more. So do we see a quicker retirement out of Lewis Hamilton because they're putting more races into the schedule? Or do we think that he's just going to complain about it and let it go?
I think he's going to complain about it, let it go. I mean, the way I look at it, more races, the more he can wrap up the championship.
That's true. And I think it'll be interesting, too, because we're adding new racetracks in. So it'll be like, how are they going to be able to handle that? Because it's going to be going into the unknown a little bit with those.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be going into the unknown. And honestly, I think Mercedes is going to dominate Vietnam because the way that track looks, it looks like it's just going to be a very power-driven track. So I think whoever has the greatest output and power will probably do well at that track. And Zandvoort, I think it's gonna be an interesting race. I can't wait for the next season. And hopefully a lot of these teams are a lot more competitive next season.
We can only hope.
Exactly.
Well, that being said, they are racing again this weekend, going back to old Spa there in Belgium. We are looking at that race being, again, on Sunday, bright and early, so that one will be on at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That being said, who do you have going for the win, for nearest the win here at Spa this weekend for Formula One, Michael?
I'm going to go with Max Verstappen.
Ooh, I certainly can't argue with that one. And I'm pretty sure the hard thing about summer breaks is it makes you actually forget who the hell you picked the time before. So I honestly can't remember if I picked Hamilton or not. So I'm going to go ahead and say, just because he signed with them again, so he knows he's got that seat next year, I'm going to go ahead and say that Valtteri Bottas is going to get the W in Spa, just to kind of solidify his rightful passage at Mercedes for next year.
Good pick, good pick.
And we're going to have to see. Hopefully they'll post them on Twitter to see what everybody else is picking for these races for Nearest the Win. You, too, can join us on Nearest the Win using hashtag Nearest the Win on Twitter. I know we have a few listeners who join in over on there to compete. I am currently leading the point standings there. Bow, thank you. Hopefully I'll be able to solidify that win very soon myself. That being said, we have one more racing circuit to talk about, and that would be NASCAR. So they actually didn't have a race last weekend. They are gearing up for good old Darlington. So throwback weekend, the Lady in Black, we are back to Darlington weekend for the Bojangles Southern 500, which is always usually a very hot race and a very fun race. I'm always excited about this one, and I think, too, is the nice part is that I think everybody does get a little extra excited because it is the throwback weekend for NASCAR, which means that a lot of race teams actually honor other past drivers and paint schemes and sponsors with some pretty cool and creative car designs. Their paint schemes will go kind of a twisty. And we were actually looking at them earlier before the show. And I know you had mentioned you had a couple favorites, so I figured we'd talk about a couple of them here on the show since we have a little bit of time here, Michael. So which ones, like, say your top 3 favorites that you've seen so far?
Top 3, Caitlin probably already knows, but it's going to have to be the Haas paint schemes. I'm a huge Tony Stewart fan. And they brought out all 3 of his championship-winning paint schemes for Daniel Suarez, Clint Boyer, and
Eric Almirola, right?
Yeah, Eric Almirola. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't.
I was trying too. I was like, I know this answer.
And they all look great, and it just makes me miss, the old days where I saw him racing in that orange number 20. But I have to say my 4th and 5th favorite are the Joe Gibbs paint schemes. You got Denny Hamlin with Darryl Waltrip's Classic 11, and you have Kurt Busch with his with the Classic Snickers paint scheme from the number 8 from the good old days. It just all looks great.
Everything too, and honestly, even while I'm saying, let's pick some favorites, we had some really good turnouts, I feel like, this year. We have some fun ones going on.
Oh yeah, definitely. I love this race because it's basically a museum on wheels.
Absolutely. But all the cars just happen to look alike.
Yeah, and they're going faster than, a museum type of race.
True. Absolutely. Well, for my top 3, so in third place, I do have Bubba Wallace's number 43 car. They actually did a paint scheme to honor the late Adam Petty, so I'm always a big fan of stuff like that, and it's such a classic, 90s looking race car. It's kind of ridiculous, and that's kind of why I appreciate it, because it just kind of looks like a little 90s mess, and I always enjoy those. So that one would probably be my third place, and then in second place, I'm actually going to go with the 00 Starcom Chevrolet of Landon Castle, who they did a throwback for Sterling Marlin back in his Coors Light car. They got the mountains and everything, and they even did the design so that the words look like they should be saying Coors Light. So I think that's pretty cool. And I remember running into Sterling Marlin a couple times when I went to race as a kid with my dad, and it was kind of funny. I don't know if he'll listen to this episode or not, but my dad actually one time was getting something signed by Sterling Marlin, and he had his coder's hat or whatever, but he had this, so he sounded like he was from Canada. My dad he's a Yooper, so he's from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and Sterling Marlin had asked him if he was from Canada, and he's like, no. He's like, I'm from Ontonagon, and he joked and about the UP, and he's like, yeah, you remember it, and he knocks on his head, and he's like, on the noggin. And Sterling Marlin actually starts busting up laughing, and I was laughing but so embarrassed because I'm this teenager, and I'm just Dad, could you not do this? What even?
Yeah, not in front of Sterling Marlin.
Literally, it was so funny, and so he had a pretty good time, so I remember that one. So definitely enjoying that paint scheme for sure for the memories. But my top one has to go to, unfortunately, Brad Keselowski in that 2 car. So he actually did a throwback for Rusty Wallace. It's one of the Miller Time cars there, back with the gold 2 and the little bit of red and blue striping on the side. It has the eagle on top. I actually grew up as a Rusty Wallace fan, and so anytime I'm seeing a Rusty Wallace paint scheme for a car, I am here for it. So that one is by far my absolute favorite for the weekend. But it should be good. It should be an exciting race. Again, we're going to be looking at this race on Sunday, actually at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, so it's a little bit of a later race, which kind of took me by surprise there for sure. But yeah, so that'll be exciting. A little bit of a night race there going on underneath the lights in Darlington for the Southern 500, brought to you by Bojangles, who is not inside of the chicken sandwich war. They're just chilling by themselves. Have you been a part of that yet, Michael? Is that even a thing up north?
It definitely is.
I didn't know if you had Popeyes in Maryland.
We do, and I was not, unfortunately, able to get the chicken sandwich.
You know what's crazy is that, I didn't do it either, but there are very literal places where the Popeyes were that it looked like a massive traffic jam for all of the people waiting on the actual street in their cars trying to get in to get themselves some Popeyes. I don't eat fast food, so it completely missed over me. But it's been pretty nuts to see this little war that's going on between Chick-fil-A and Popeyes.
Yeah, it's crazy out here.
I agree.
For a sandwich.
For a sandwich, I know. What the actual hell? With that being said, we do need to make picks for the Bojangles Southern 500. They're just chilling over by themselves. I've not had Bojangles' sandwich yet, but I heard that if you're like hungover from the day before, that it is like the best like hangover cure you can find. So I'll have to give that a shot sometime. Everybody, they're just chilling on their own. They're not a part of this apparently. But that being said, we do have to make picks for Darlington this weekend as well. So we go from having like barely any racing to all of the racing this weekend. So who are you going to pick for your guy in the Bojangles Southern 500, sir?
I'm going to go with Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch. Good pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up coming through and winning that one. Last year was actually, if I remember correctly, good old Kyle Larson won, and we haven't heard much of him. I lied. No, Kyle Larson dominated last year, didn't he? But he ended up losing to, I believe, Brad Keselowski, if I remember that correctly, and he's actually who I'm going to pick. Again, just because he's in my driver's paint colors this year for the Southern 500, I'm going to go with him. So I'm going to actually go with good old Brad Keselowski for the win. And that being said, Michael, do you have anything else to add here tonight?
Oh, not at all. It's been a fun show.
It really has been. Thanks for hanging out with me. We handled it while the other ones were at play. I think that they missed some good stuff here, but, you know, we got it covered. We handled it. So we can still, hang with each other. At the very least, we got this together.
Yep.
But, guys, that being said, I feel like we're kind of rounding out to the end of it here. Michael, where can they catch you on social media?
They can catch me on Twitter at stargazer_FX.
Awesome. And then for me, you can catch me at Caitlin Seam. And then also, if you want to listen to more sports talk outside of just racing, you can follow my show here on iSports Radio, which actually comes on at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, so right before this show, called Not What It Seems. Catch me out there too, but catch everything, including Matt White's personal show, Two Wheels Wednesday, everything on iSports Radio, which you can follow at that name. And also, we are on our own little website now, so we have iSportsRadio.com as well. And you can find us on YouTube these days too. So we got a cool little group of stuff going on here for sure. Darryl, Kinsey Jr., and Lita Camillo will be with us next weekend, so we'll have a full house to talk about all of this incredible racing that we previewed for you tonight. So be sure to check us out next week on iSports Radio. Spreaker.com if you want to check us out live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. With that being said, this is Caitlin Seam and Michael Ward bidding you a good night, a great weekend in racing, and we will see you at the next green flag. Good night, everyone.